All right, everybody. I'm so honored to have another first-time Note Camp speaker here, a longtime friend, a guy who I honestly say this, and he doesn't know how to say this, probably has had more influence on my business and my marketing over the last 5 years than anybody else out there. And somebody who I didn't want to work with at first because I was like, I don't want to do all that extra work. I don't want to do. He was like, you need to do something. You need to do this. You're missing out on a huge marketing opportunity. I was like, don't want to do so. But honored, somebody that's now become one of my best friends in the last few years, a guy that has honestly not a mean mode in his body. He's always looking for ways to help his clients, help his friends leverage their time, leverage their expertise, grow their audience, and monetize their audience. And that's why he is the man, the chief bottle washer over at monetize.com. Him and his wife, Tracy, are just absolutely great people and some of our best friends out there. And he's joined us live from another event. He's actually down in San Diego. I recognize the blinds, the Dana on Mission Bay there.
Yeah, you got it. That's where I am.
He's at an Inner Circle. Same thing, like Kevin Day was on here earlier yesterday. He was down there as well,
He's here. Yeah, I just saw him an hour ago. Yep.
That's good thing. But anyway, guys, I want you to take you're going to take a lot of notes from here. And this is something, this may not be all for you right now, but at some point, I guarantee if you guys are looking at long-term success, looking to be an investor long-term, this is going to be, and it is right now, I have to say, it is one of the hottest strategies. And it's never been easier to implement with what Tom's going to talk about with you guys here. So I will shut up. You want to take questions as we go, Tom, or wait till the very end? What would you prefer?
Why don't we, you know what, Scott, let me leave that up to you. If somebody is asking a question in the chat, because you're keeping an eye on that, I'm actually not going to be seeing that the way I do this presentation.
Totally fine.
So if you want to chime in, feel free. I'm very happy to have you do that.
All right, sounds good, man. Well, I'm gonna jump off screen here and give you the bandwidth there, buddy. All righty.
All right, thank you. Well, hey, thanks again, Scott. I really appreciate the kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here today. What really I want to share with you today is a strategy to be found by your ideal customers, ideal clients. You know, there are many different courses that you can take out there on how to do something, but you then still have to go and do it. Now, while what I'm going to show you today, that's still a little bit true, because I'm going to suggest you might consider podcasting as a way to build an audience, to market what you do, and to attract your ideal customers or clients. All you have to do is record. You don't have to do anything else. And if you're like me in business, you're on Zoom 5 to 8 times a day anyway, every day. And really, that's all it takes to record a podcast. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to really share with you why this would be something to consider. You know, what would be why podcasting for you, especially today. So first, just a little bit about me and my wife and business partner, Tracy. We, have been in business for more than 25 years. Wow. More than I care to think about. And we've had many podcasts over the years. So we started just like you in business and decided, we might experiment with this thing called podcasting about 7 years ago to see if we could build a market for what we wanted to do. So we've had multiple podcasts. You see a few of them here. Tracy's also been an Inc. columnist. There's a course written about us, taught about us rather, in the Harvard Business Review in 26 countries around the world. So, I mean, just a little bit about sort of why you might, care about anything that we have to say about this. I mean, not only have we had our own podcast, but now for the last 5+ years, we've had our own business around it. That brand is called Monetize. And when I'm on a green screen, this is usually behind me, this graphic, but this is to show you just a few of the more than 500 shows that we have launched and are producing for business owners and entrepreneurs, many of them just like you. And you'll notice down there, sort of in the lower third there, there's Scott's show up here as well. 2 shows that you might be interested in listening to now, especially if you're considering podcasting, is Feed Your Brand and the binge factor. Feed Your Brand this is all free content. You can check it out anytime, but Feed Your Brand is our podcast for podcasters, where we talk about tips and tricks and what's working today, best practices, things like that. The Binge Factor is my partner Tracy's podcast, where she interviews top podcasters about what made their show successful, what makes their show bingeable. At the end of the day, that's what we want, is to, create content that people just want to come back and consume the next one, the next one, the next one. Or, if they're coming to your show at a later date, binge through all your episodes. So that's why, that's called the Binge Factor. So as I said, I'm the CTO, Tracy's the CEO. The Binge Factor is her show. But what I want to talk to you today is about why podcast, especially today. Well, if you are in business and you want to do any of these things, you've got products, courses, coaching, consulting, books, you're trying to get butts in seats for webinars, summits like Note Camp, right? Scott is one of the best examples, actually, of using his podcast to drive people to fill an event. I bet a lot of you probably first heard Scott on a podcast, or if you didn't, you probably learned about him through one of the other, how would I say, collateral pieces of material that's created from one of his podcasts. Is that, this is not just all about an audio show. There's an awful lot more to it, and I'm going to show you that here today. But then, if you are somebody that needs to get more people to find you who need what it is that you do, they may not know who you are. They may not even know you have a podcast when you have one, or maybe that you have been a guest on a podcast. But I'm going to show you how those people are going to find you regardless of those things. They're going to find you from a podcast, even if they don't listen to a podcast. And I know that's counterintuitive, but it absolutely happens. The problem is all of us are trying to be found, right? All of us are trying to be seen and heard. But so many of our messages, a very large percentage of our messages, aren't heard. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, your typical Facebook post is seen by less than 2% of your followers. The typical, Google ad or YouTube ad is, seen by maybe, 13% of, the total people you want them to be seen. Well, what I'm going to show you is how with podcasting conversion rates, especially, and these actually are conversion rates, not seen by, I was mistaken there, but conversion rate to Facebook ads is 1.3%, to Google and YouTube ads is 13%, but conversion rates for calls to action in podcasts we see between 30 and 40%. And why today? Well, there are 750,000 active podcasts today. That you may have seen some stats that there's actually about 2 million podcasts now total have been launched, and that's true, but only 750,000 of them are still producing new podcasts today. So we're talking about swimming in a smaller pond, marketing in a smaller pond. There's more opportunity, even though there's 750,000 sounds like a lot of podcasts. In your particular niche, there's not going to be near that many. There's probably dozens, but still you can set yourself apart. And compared to everybody says you have to have a website for your business, right? It's like it's the business card today. You have to have a website. Well, that's true, but there's over 1.5 billion websites on the internet. So trying to get your website to come up and show up actually better than your competitors and amongst all that competition, 750,000 active podcasts now doesn't sound too big. Now I'm going to share a few examples that are not in the real estate industry, but they're good examples. It still applies to every industry. It's really hard to be found today. In Los Angeles, there's 20,000 wedding planners. And this is actually a photo of a real podcast host on the right of this picture. Her name's Laura. And, she launched a podcast about wedding planners as a way to stand out among 33 million Google search results and 20,000 actual Los Angeles area wedding planners. But putting out a podcast, she became very well known and found by many, many potential customers just because of the podcast and what it does for you in terms of SEO and being found. Now, I'm sure many of you know of, if you don't listen to, Joe Rogan, and his type of show is very different. He's like the elite, top 1/10 of 1% of podcasters, where the show is really all about him and that's about it. And it's a variety show and people listen to it for entertainment. That is not the type of podcasting I'm talking about. This type of show is all about him. It's really not on trend. One thing I want to tell you is your podcast, if you do it, or if you're a guest on podcasts, it's not all about you. It's about serving a community and building trust and getting people to like you who don't even know you. Dale Carnegie is famous for saying you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. So if you show interest in your area of specialty, your area of expertise, and serve them, and then you're going to get that coming back to you many, many times over. And podcasting is the easiest way I know of to do it, just recording your way to it. So one of the things I really want to share with you today is about SEO. And you might think, wait a second, I thought Tom was talking about podcasting. Why is he saying something about SEO? Well, here's the thing. A blog post on your website is the best vehicle for you to be found. But who the heck has the time to write a 3,000 plus word blog post? The average person who does write a blog post, when surveyed, has said that it takes between 3 to 4 hours. Honestly, 3,000 words would probably take me 5 or 6 hours to agonize over. People spend way too much time on it. Now, it's true, it works incredibly well, but you can speak your way to a 3,000 word blog post in about, it's about 20 minutes, because the average person speaks about 150 words a minute. So that's how we get to a 3,000 word blog post in about a 20-minute episode. There's also the reality of what we have termed verbal SEO. Because we use these devices like the smart speakers and our phones with Siri and, Hey Google and all these things, Alexa, and we're asking questions. People are speaking their search terms. And many of you probably know, but some of you may not. You can say, Hey, Alexa, play me the latest episode of the Note Closer Show. And Alexa will find it and start playing it. And you can listen to it. But it's more than just playing and listening over that device. It's also the search that's happening. And searches happen for all sorts of things, right? All sorts of subjects people are interested in. So being heard on those devices is important, but verbal SEO, it's about people searching on things that are in alignment with what you say on a podcast. So think about that for a minute. I'm gonna come back to that. But what we're talking about is recording your way to content and putting it everywhere. You might do it as video. Scott does most of the time. I do on my shows. About a third of our customers do. Not everybody does. Certainly much easier to record just audio, and that's enough to get going. I'd rather you do that and record a lot of content than not do it because of the video aspect. For whatever reason, that's not for you. We're talking about video to audio to blog to social media, recording something once, turning it into content that serves you in all of these areas. And some people go live. I do with one of my podcasts. Some people do. Not everybody does that. But if you do it live, you can go live to Facebook, live to YouTube. You're on Zoom like we are now. And you actually can engage more people because you trip the algorithms. But even if you don't, a podcast is syndicated to all of these different places. And, and more. We keep adding more apps. I think every podcaster we launch is put on all of these different platforms. Once in a while, a new one comes along. In fact, a new one just did come out that's not on this graphic yet, that we've now started syndicating all of our customers to, called Good Pods. It's another podcast listening app. So that happens automatically. And so what we're talking is you becoming the voice of authority for your niche, for your audience, to have people find you. You're going to be heard. You're going to be found if you put out a podcast. Now, how is that? Because obviously there's a certain amount of organic reach you're going to get just from putting out a podcast and being on all the apps, or deciding to go be a guest on the right podcast. I wouldn't recommend you be a guest on just any podcast, but being a guest on the right podcast, you're going to get you're certainly going to be heard and found to a certain extent organically just through the podcast apps. But what we do at Monetize, and we recommend everybody does, is, well, what I'm showing you here are another podcaster who some of you who know Scott may know, because I think Meryl Chandler has been a guest on a lot of Scott's stuff in the past, but a podcast called Get Fundable. This is the podcast page on Meryl's website, where at the top, it gives you info about the podcast. There's this big player window that, anybody who comes to your website can play any episode right there. And then there are these podcast related blog posts, one for every episode. And the latest one is at the top on the left. And then the next one that publishes will replace that, move the next ones over, and eventually down. When you click on one of these and open up the full blog post, this is what you would see on Get Fundable website, is a wide format of a banner graphic that's original. And, obviously he has some things in the sidebar. Below that, if there's a video, I love this. I paused this of Meryl just because I like that expression on his face. I thought that was kind of funny. But if you have a video, it's embedded right there, or people can listen to the audio if they prefer. And then below that is a speech to text conversion of what was said in the episode. Now, it's not just a transcript. There's an awful lot more that goes into that. There's a 4-step process of cleaning it up, improving the grammar, making it easier to read, but it's still going to be 90% what was said in the episode. Because as wonderful as podcasting is, and the podcast apps are, and I'm a podcaster, I love it. There are far more people that are searching in Google every day for things they're interested in, or their pain points, their desires, whatever it is, than there are in the podcast apps. And in the podcast apps, your episodes are only searchable by what's in their titles and descriptions. What you say within the episode is blind to those Google searches, even the podcast searches in the apps. So by doing this, your blog posts get associated with dozens of phrases people are searching on in Google every day. So the next time, once you post an episode like this and post the blog, next time somebody searches on those terms, your post comes up, people click, boom, they're on your website. Right there, they see at the top of the post, like this graphic again, and it's like, oh, this is a show. Oh, Get Fundable podcast. All right, what's that? And then, they can watch, listen, or read. But remember, the best part is you've gotten them to your website. Remember how I was talking about how earlier there's over 1.5 billion websites? This is how you get found among that vast sea of websites. Google doesn't discriminate. They don't care that you're an individual or an entrepreneur or a small company compared to a big Fortune 500 company. All Google wants to do is serve up the most relevant content to what people are searching on. So our average podcasters who've been doing this for a year are ranking on usually 4,000 or 5,000 keywords in Google search, and getting several more thousand than that unique visitors to their website every month. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. That's how you get found. But I want to show you a few other things that we create for every episode. This is an example of an audiogram. Remember I said you don't have to record video? You certainly don't. But video is today the preferred medium for, posting things on social media. So for those people that don't record video, we create what's called an audiogram. And this is an example of an audiogram where you have, obviously this is for the Binge Factor. Tracy's the host. Pat Flynn was the guest. And there's a 30-second clip playing here of something, a quote of something that Pat said that was just really brilliant. And so we share this on social media. And of course, we provide it to the guests so they can share it on social media. There's a lot of individual materials like this to incentivize a guest to share your episode, and also just to get attention on social media that come with producing every episode when, for the people that work with us at Monetize, and we produce their shows for them once they have a podcast. Now, another great thing we do, this is one of my favorite things. It is called ego bait. And I'm going to show you a couple different versions here in a moment, but this is a quote graphic that we create for every episode. And we recommend every podcaster do this and provide it to your guest. This is a quote of something Tracy, the host, said about Chad, the guest, that makes him look really good. It's very flattering. And so when we send that to him after his show is aired, do you think he shares it? He usually, every guest does, because it's about them. Chad's saying, hey, world, look at me. I was on this show. And of course, at the same time, he's saying, hey, world, check out this show. And most people do. There are a few other, ways you can create ego bait graphics. Like, here's one that Tracy's saying Pat Flynn is one of the best teachers, not just for podcasting, but for creating a whole digital business. And, there are other kinds of graphics that can be created. And this is all just coming from recording your podcast. And the upper left image here is actually the blog post for Tracy's interview with Pat, which is on thebingefactor.com. So all sorts of ways you can use your podcast. I want to share one other little example and highlight another podcaster. This is Kim Seltzer, who has a podcast called The Charisma Quotient. Again, not in the real estate field of things, but she does something really cool. She shows how she works with clients. And this is something any podcaster can do when they hot seat a customer of theirs and do some on-air coaching or mentoring. And so that can show your audience, wow, look what Kim's doing with this person. Wow, I'd love if she did that with me. And, there are many things you can do with a podcast in terms of what kind of content you create and what kind of value you provide to your audience. This is just an example of something else that you might do. Another good one is, let's say you want to build rapport with really high net worth investors. And, these people probably have had quite a career, had a lot of experience. You can create a podcast where you interview your ideal clients or customers, highlight them, build rapport with them, give them some value. The show doesn't have to be about investing. It can just be about profiles of successful people, right? And then you serve them, you give them value, you interview them, you publish that episode, and then you follow up with them after when that's done and say, hey, I was really thinking about you and wondered if, you might be interested in this type of opportunity, or however you might, segue into perhaps doing business with that person. Another great thing you could do is be a podcast guest. Guest podcasting is the new guest blogging. This is a quote Pat Flynn said on Tracy's show, The Binge Factor. He was a blogger originally, way back in the day when, podcasting wasn't even much of a thing, and eventually went to podcasting because it's just obviously a whole lot easier to speak your way to that blog post than it is to write it the conventional way. But one of the things about being a podcast host when you have your own show is that really a lot of podcasters do what's called a show swap or an interview swap. So not only do you speak to other podcast listeners who aren't listening to your show yet, you know those people listen to podcasts and they're learning about your show, and they might very well come listen to your show also. And so you and other podcast hosts can provide value to each other. And we find, because we also do place people as guests on podcasts, but we find that when people have a podcast, we have a much easier time getting them placed, because usually a guest swap works for both sides, and it's a win-win. A few other guesting tips, just if you're interested in that, is, you got to find shows to be a guest on that have the right audience fit. You want to pitch personally. You don't want to send out a mass email, and give value, and then you'll get a lot of value. And of course, you get a lot of material to share everywhere. But no matter how you get listeners, whether you're a guest or a podcast host, getting more listeners will convert more buyers. They get to know you, and trust you. You've never met them. You've never had a call. They're listening to you, and then they reach out to you. So that is sort of the quick version. Scott, I've gotten through a lot of slides a lot faster than I thought I would, because I usually talk slowly, but today not so much. One of the things that I'm going to be happy to take questions, and Scott, we can have some discussion, but I do want to share with everybody, Scott and I have decided to do a program we're calling REAP, the Real Estate Podcasting Program, a 2-day course. And there is, if you want to learn about how to do this and do it right, and get so far down the road, we're actually, Scott and I both, and also my partner Tracy, are gonna, on a 2-day course, take you through exactly how to do this. So
Yeah,
let's see.
this is something that we've been talking about doing for a while now, because it's had such a big impact on what we do. I mean, with people listening to podcasts, I mean, we've got a couple hundred people here that are RSVP'd for Note Camp, and it's always interesting to see how people hear from me. Either, hey, how many of you guys see me on YouTube, or listen to my podcast, or heard me on somebody else's podcast? I mean, it's not as difficult as you think it would be. It used to be you record a podcast, you're spending hours doing audio editing, having to upload it and stuff like that, and your team actually does a lot of the stuff that goes along with it. But if people want to edit themselves, they can, but it's easier than it's ever been before, right?
Right. Look, I wouldn't recommend that any serious entrepreneur or business person spend the time to learn how to edit audio and or video well. And just that alone is not something you should be spending your time on. I mean, I'm a business owner and entrepreneur myself, and I that would be a huge waste of my time. And I've been a podcaster now for over 7 years. I have never edited one episode. I never did from the beginning. That was not in my vision or goal. I want to record my message and bring it to the world. Mm-hmm. And then have other people do that stuff. Yes, certainly there are a lot of do-it-yourselfers, and if you want to learn how to do that, there are a lot of resources, and we'll even help provide resources for you to do that. And there are a lot of free resources, but you're going to have to spend a huge amount of time to do it. Our ideal, people that we work with value spending some money to save time and get a huge return on that time they're investing. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about. It's like, it's really a marketing machine put on autopilot, and you just have to put the time in to have a little vision of what you want to talk about, or strategize, put a plan together for what kind of content you think would be of interest to your target market, record it and hand it off, put it out there. All those things I was showing you with the blog post and those graphics, all that stuff is done automatically. Our clients just record, upload, and they're done.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you a question, because a lot of people are like, man, what is there, 1.1, 1.2 million podcasts out there right now?
Total, actually, it's closer to 2 million in total, but most of them have what we call pod faded. people have quit their shows. They haven't stuck with it, or they're just really old. I mean, there's about 700 to 750,000 active, meaning publishing new episodes weekly.
Yeah, that's such a small volume when you compare to everything. And there's a whole variety of shows. Some people do, like our buddy Chris Cremosis does the whole, like, with the kid joke a day, which is 5-10 minutes a day, building content for his kids. And you got, like, you mentioned Kim, our friend Kim Seltzer, there interviewing her clients and talking about them, and she does a lot with dating and appearance stuff. You've got me. I'm teaching half the time, and then another half the time I'm actually interviewing guests or experts in the field. I mean, that's launched the Good Deeds podcast. Chris Savigny, and it started a podcast off there. Paul Cooper with Totes of Notes, actually out of Colorado Springs, launched a podcast. It's funny. It all started really with Chase Thompson, who used to work for me, and Robbie Woods.
That's right.
One of my mastermind student, actually a deadbeat borrower of mine back in the day, started the Note MBA podcast. And there wasn't that many. It was really the only Note podcast out there. Well, there's been more that have popped up on there, but it really built a following for them to get started up there. And then when Robbie told me in the Dominican Republic, we're on vacation together for a wedding, he said he wasn't going to do the podcast. I was like, what? You've built this audience, a couple hundred episodes twice a week. Why wouldn't you do this? And I will tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking to raise capital, you're looking to find more deals, or looking for people to reach out to you, there's nothing better than podcasting, because of, you mentioned it, the retention of listeners. What's the average percent of content listened to or completion ratio with podcasts? Something like 86, 87%.
Oh, yeah, it's over 80%, in total, meaning, there are always some stats. Somebody starts playing an episode, they thought it was going to be on something that then it didn't end up being focused on, and they stopped listening. So somebody listened to 10% of it. But the majority of podcasts are, the statistical average is over 80%. And of course, when you look, and there are analytics that you can see how many people are listening, to what percentage of your episodes. It's usually, the best episodes, well over 96, 98%. And that's just like people clicking it off after they hear it's winding down and they don't think they need to listen anymore, but they got the main content, the main benefit.
Now, what would you say your clients are publishing on an average basis in the at least once a week, usually?
So we really do recommend, in order to properly grow and maintain an audience over time, you have to be publishing at least a weekly show. There is no, how do I say, there is no upper limit to how much content you might create. It depends on how much time you're willing to spend, but the returns come back to you amplified the more content you publish. My first show, for a couple of years, we published 5 days a week, because we really wanted to kill it and become a dominant podcast in the space. And we did. We grew a massive audience very quickly of 30,000 people within 6 months. And then we ended up having a total audience of over 100,000 weekly listeners. And we monetized that. Not just the best way to monetize is actually when you have a business or something that you're wanting to lead generate for. That's the easiest and fastest way. We actually ended up advertising with outside third-party sponsors, which I think you're also doing on your show, aren't you, Scott?
We have a third-party sponsor, so yeah.
Yeah.
But it came from the fact that we delivered content. That was the biggest thing, is the regular content. We listened, people that most of them were actually guests on our show to begin with. And they saw the impact that they got with emails or opt-ins or link clicks, or just the quality of content that we delivered. They're like, ooh, I want to keep this. I want to keep this thing going.
I remember, Scott, of course, in the very beginning, I think Scott mentioned earlier, when I first met him, actually not at this event I'm at, but at this venue at the Dana in San Diego. We're all on a boat cruise in the evening. And that's always really dicey. Boat cruise, some people get nauseous and people have drinks and food and there can be waves, and it's a really good environment to get people to let their guards down and just engage with each other. Anyway, I thought Scott I saw you speak on notes. I'm like, God, this is a great message. And I was looking at some of your stuff online. I'm like, Scott should really consider a podcast. He definitely gave me the Heisman, for
Oh,
a
no.
while.
My exact words, like, oh, I don't want to do all that work. I was hearing from Chase and Robbie at the time, like, oh yeah, and I asked him, I said, oh, I spend about 3 hours of editing versus hour. I'm like, oh, that's not an effective use of my time.
But they weren't doing it the right way. Had they had us, they would have just recorded like this. When we're done recording this at whatever time we stop, and then you repurpose that as a podcast, right? So you don't have to spend that kind of time. And if they had done blog posts, they would still be getting value out of those old episodes today and having people go to their website. So, but anyway, Scott was not all that excited at first, and now I lost track of the point I was going to make on that.
I gave you the Heisman. You tried to sell me on it. I gave you the Heisman on it.
Oh, yes. So I remember. Okay, so this is great. So I remember Scott decides, all right, yeah, we're going to do it at some point. I don't know, some number of months later, he calls me back and says, okay, I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's give it a shot. Well, early on, you were at a different event in Anaheim, I think, and that's pretty close to me. So I drove to see you that day, and I had just looked up your episode that published on the Wednesday before. This was on a Saturday when I saw you, and you in that episode mentioned a company that you all use in the note business called Tape Techs, I think, something like that.
Tape Techs, yep, it was. Yeah. They're no longer around anymore, but yeah.
Oh, they're not there. Well, the example is still a good one though, because he mentioned this company in his podcast. We obviously created a blog post about that podcast. Within that amount of time, from Wednesday to Saturday, Google indexed, meaning they noticed the blog post published, they analyzed it, they found all sorts of different terms, phrases, company names, and things that are mentioned in it. And then his blog post started coming up for when people search on those terms. And one of them was this company. Scott ranked on the first page of Google for that term, his post did, and higher than that company ranked for their own website, which says that they were doing a pretty bad job of SEO for their main website. They weren't really paying attention to it. But this happens, we see this happen all the time, not just for company names, but your guests' names.
Yeah, I rank higher. My podcast ranks higher in the search engines for a well-known self-directed IRA company. It ranks higher because we did more marketing and we would mention and just in passing in conversations. And that's the beauty about doing a fully transcribed blog versus like just show notes, where it's the high points. Is the full transcribed thing is just, it's like literally like SEO on freaking the Hulk secret soldier serum sauce, basically. You know what I mean?
It really is. And it's because Google wants to provide people search results that are very relevant and meaningful. And this is something we experimented with for years, just for ourselves, before we even started a business around it. And then eventually we did, because people, not Scott, but like Scott, kept coming to us with seeing our own podcast, what we were doing, and say, wow, that's really great what you're doing. Can you do that for me? And so that's sort of how it started, organically on the side of our other business. And then it's now become this big thing, and it's the dominant one because it works. What I love about what we do is it's very measurable. Mm-hmm. You, with a podcast, how many people are listening, how many people are watching. If you have videos, how much traffic is going to those pages on your website. Your keyword rankings will go up doing this, and so more people are going to end up traveling to your website, and that traffic to your website, it's all measurable. And you can capture that traffic with whatever value you want to provide people, with whatever offers you have, for them to engage with you. The biggest problem everybody has in business is being found. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we're talking about today. That's what this is all about.
And honestly, everybody, recording an episode is easy as hitting Zoom to hit record. And that's what I do. I use Zoom It's probably, what is it, your number one way people record episodes with you for the most
It
part?
absolutely is. And in fact, I mean, we're podcasters too. I mean, between me and Tracy, we have like 6 different shows that we're doing, and we use Zoom exclusively because here's the thing. There was a time when Zoom was not as mature as it is today, and the recording wasn't as high a quality, but it really, over the last couple of years, it's gotten to be just as good as anything else. And what's great about it, the reason we use it is, there are some other fine software that record, certainly. And you know what? It is a preference or a choice. If you prefer a different platform, there's nothing wrong with you recording there. I'm not like selling Zoom. All right. I'm just telling you what I do. Well, the reason I use it, it's so easy for a guest to connect. They have a link, they click it, boom, they're in. You remember when I don't know if you did this, Scott, you may not have, but when I started, the dominant tool was Skype that people were using.
Yeah.
And people had to sign up and have a Skype account. And if they didn't, there was a way you could use Skype to call them on the phone and they would talk on their phone. Of course, that audio was pretty lousy quality. Anyway, things have evolved quite a bit in the time that we've been doing this. And while certainly there are plenty of good tools, some people are using StreamYard, some people, if they're going live, you might want to, consider some other tools, but at least understand that it is as simple as just Zoom, but you're going to have a good quality microphone, right? We want to have good quality audio.
Well, but let's talk about that, because I think a lot of people, oh my God, it costs a lot of money to podcast, and it doesn't. I mean, you could literally go Facebook Live,
Yep.
and download the download the file, send it in. You guys produce it and strip the audio out, because you've done it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as a good micro, are we talking like $300, $500?
No, a good microphone, if you just on Amazon Prime, $80, the one I would recommend you use. There are more expensive choices, certainly, but more expensive choices don't really translate to better quality audio most of the time. Really, your environment plays a much bigger role in that audio quality. I'm listening to you, Scott, with earbuds. I'm not using this microphone on the earbuds, although it has one. I'm using my good quality microphone, and I'm on the road. I traveled with this. Yep. I throw it in my. I'm kind of old school. I carry a backpack with my computer and stuff in it, and I just throw the mic in there. Or if you're flying on a plane, you can check it in your luggage. It's simple. So yeah, great quality audio just means a good quality microphone. And there are different kinds of microphones, but I actually have a episode I recorded about, the best podcast microphones, and it's on monetize.com. You can go to our Feed Your Brand page, which is for that podcast for podcasters I mentioned earlier. And you can go ahead and just search on microphones. And I think, you know what, I should be remembering, and I'm probably not. If Tracy heard me giving this presentation, she would scold me, because she's like, Tom, we have a shortened link just for that one, because microphones are like one of the most important things. And I think it might be monetize.com/mic. It might be that, but I'm going from memory. And anyway, but I went and tested like 10 microphones, and I reviewed them all. I've got unboxing videos. I've got detailed videos of how to use them. And you can listen to raw audio, unedited, of me recording on each one of them. So you can play them, and you don't even have to take my word for it. You can be your own judge if you want to go to that extent. If you're that type of person, you want to do that much research, you can. But I'm also here to help you not have to reinvent the wheel, right? And just having a good microphone is better than just using one of these or using what's built into your computer. You don't want to do that. And because I record video, I've got a high quality external webcam for my video quality too. And that's a $50 item. I mean, these are not expensive things. Like you were saying, Scott, it is not expensive.
And that's the thing. Let's talk a little bit about what we're covering in the 2-day course. Because somebody asked me a question here. What are you guys going to cover? I'm gonna throw you some stuff there. We're going to include a microphone. We're going to include a Logitech webcam for you. That's roughly $150 to $200 in product right there for you. We haven't decided if we're going to do it in person, either in Texas or California, or via Zoom. We're going to say tentatively Zoom, depending on what's going on with the lockdown again. Who knows, right?
Right. Well, I'm also Scott. Of course, Scott and I haven't obviously dotted every I and crossed every T here, but I'm even going to venture to say, even if we do it in person, Scott, we need to do it virtual also.
Oh, yeah.
We should do that as a hybrid event if we're going to do it in person. But at minimum, it will be live, not recordings. You, me, Tracy, working together, tag teaming to provide you a lot of value. I mean, I just barely scratched the surface today with you about the details, and Tracy was presenting at the same time at this other event. Otherwise, she's a much better presenter than me. She would have been here, and you would have probably enjoyed it more. But I hope you got some good value, or getting some good value here today anyway for me. But it's yeah, we're gonna really, because look, it's one thing to know what's required. Okay. Yeah, you have to have a cover art. It's got to be square. It's got to be a certain size, whatever. But there are other things that are important too. You know what, Scott? I'm gonna show something else here, which I want to show you an example. This is the #1 rookie error in podcasting. Am I showing now, Scott?
You are sure, and you were thinking exactly like I was thinking.
Okay.
People putting their freaking face on the artwork.
This is the #1 rookie error. People, remember, I told you at one point, and the intent of this image was to really sort of say, who the heck is this kid, right? It's not about you, and that you need to serve first. You got to provide value for the listener first. But beyond that, there's a very practical reason why we do not recommend you put your own face on your cover art. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of people do it. Actually, if I go back, you probably can't really see it too well, but if I go back to this slide, which has a lot of our podcasters' cover arts on it, there's a bunch of faces there. I'm not going to lie. People do it. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's your show. If you really want to have your face on your cover art, 100% you can do it. I am not going to stand in your way. That is not my job. But my job is to share with you best practices, what I believe is in your best interest. And at the end of the day, you make a business decision if you want to take that advice or not. But this one, here's why I don't recommend you put your face on your cover art. And by the way, I've had, I don't know, at least half a dozen podcasts, never had my face on any of them. And I don't care if I become really well known more than I am in my industry, I'm still not going to put my face on it, because it's not about me, and I believe that. But here's why. Well, first of all, if I am a middle-aged white man, which I am, and you search for a podcast on podcasting and my show comes up and my face is on the cover art, if you're not a middle-aged white man, it's not like a discriminatory thing or a racist thing, but it is a human nature thing. People tend to like people like themselves. Yep. And if you're a younger woman and the first thing you see when you search on how to podcast is me, a middle-aged white guy, not a young woman, and certainly not a person of color, if you are any other ethnicity or gender than me, you're probably going to say, okay, next, move on, swipe, what's a show that I can find somebody who looks more like me. But if you have a podcast that has a graphic on it that does not have your name, and here's just a couple examples, the name and what people see is more relevant to the content and what people are going to get out of it, what's in it for them. So we always tell people, get your face off your cover art.
Well, and it's the thing too. It's literally, for the most part, being seen on a 1-inch square image. And if you have your face taking up 3/4 of the spot, the name becomes almost unseeable of the podcast. And we're not searching Scott Carson podcast. We're searching for a name. We're looking for keywords for real estate podcast or note investing podcast. That's why the Note Closer Show is the Note Closer Show artwork. You know.
So if you go and you search on podcasts and you look at them on your phone, I mean they're like an inch square, if that. It depends on the size of your phone. So yeah, you take up a lot of real estate with your face, and you use text that's really thin. I mean, that's like, for instance, on my screen is the life coach school, right? And can you even read what's in the red portion there? I mean, and the other thing, putting your face on your cover art, I mean, there may be times to do it. Okay. If you're nationally known, if you're Oprah, yeah, you put your face on your cover art because people are going to listen because you're Oprah or Ellen or who, somebody really, really big. You're a politician, you're some sort of public figure. Shark Tank. Exactly. If you're Mark Cuban, you put your face on your cover art because people are wanting to listen just because it's you and they know of you. That's entirely different. I'm talking about people who don't know you, don't know who you are. You don't want to give them a reason not to give it a try. Your cover art's job. And this is the stuff we're going to, again, go into things like this to help you avoid some of the common landmines that new podcasters trip on that would really stifle your growth and progress. You may, make one of those rookie errors and then right out of the gate, negatively impact your ability to reach people or have them find you. That's what we want to try to avoid. Now, look at this guy up there, 5-minute marketing. He hardly looks like he's had enough experience with marketing to tell you anything about it. Maybe he has 5 minutes of experience. I don't know. I mean, that's what I think of when I look at him. He looks like way too young to be an expert in marketing. So I would say for that reason, that was not a good choice.
Well, and it's the thing too. It's not just the image. It's also the name out there. And I think you might have one of the most valuable name uppers at your disposal to name different podcasts out there, correct?
Yes, I'll tell you what, folks, this is something I have learned. Scott Carson is a brilliant marketer, and he's just got a knack for coming up with a really good name that is catchy. And that's another thing that we like to try to do. Not every show has to be that or should be that, but being memorable, being easy to understand, conveying an intent or a genre or a value in the name in 3 words, ideally. 3 words, no more than 5, but we try to keep it like, look, feed your brand, the binge factor. I'm going to throw away the, in some cases, Note Closer Show, right?
Swimming in the air. The guy that taught swimming on a podcast without diving into the water, swimming in air, right?
It's amazing. And so the little known secret about monetize is if we're stumped on a name, I'll text Scott, hey Scott, I got a podcast about this and they're sort of thinking this and this, you got any good ideas? And I don't even pay him for it, which I should, but he comes up with great names. And one of my favorites that never became a podcast was somebody who wanted to do one for apartment, a real estate related podcast for apartments. Scott came up with the best name. I'm going to let you deliver it.
I don't remember what it was.
You don't?
I don't.
My gosh. It was the most brilliant name ever for real estate investors in multi-family unit, properties. It was called More Doors, Less Headaches. It was the name we came up with.
Right. You're right.
Which totally is brilliant because if you're a real estate investor and you see that, you're going to be like, oh, I know what it means about having many doors. I mean, that's industry lingo. Person that doesn't know and isn't really your listener isn't going to know what that is and probably isn't going to click on it. And they shouldn't. They're not your listener. You don't care about them. You want the people. So I'll give you another geeky example. for just me, my very first podcast, was it in here? Yeah, it is. My very first podcast is called WTFFF, and that's the geeky term FFF for 3D printing. And so we called it that because we knew the people that were wanting to listen to a 3D print podcast were going to know exactly what FFF meant and what it's fused filament fabrication. I told you it's like geeky, right? Um, but also at the time it was a play on WTF, the podcast with Mark Marone, I think that's his name.
Mark
And
Maloney, exactly.
and that was really big, about that time. And so we were sort of drafting off of, there'd be a lot of people searching for WTF, and then our show would come up in that search too. So there's some other reasons why you might choose a name if you want to, there's some strategy in names and in the description of your podcast and other things to make sure your show comes up in searches in the podcast apps for the for what your competitors are coming up for. You can model them, go to school on them, and do better than them. And so these are there's so many different things we're going to cover in this 2-day course. It's like I'm saying, I'm not just giving you a playbook and make you run it. I mean, the idea is we get into nitty gritty of strategy, how to make better decisions, the right decisions, and avoid those rookie errors, those common pitfalls we see so many podcasters making rather.
And that's the big thing. We're going to help you with your logo. We're going to help you put the right description on Apple there for you. Tom already helps people get their podcast along to all those other things syndicated. We'll help you come up with your top 10 episodes so you can record them. I mean, if you're looking to get booked in
like topics, right?
Yeah, exactly. Topics. We're not going to record it for you.
Right.
We got to record, but we can still give you the best practices, how long, what you need to do. We've got a great database. You've got your booking calendar. I've got a private podcast group, so making sure you have plenty of people you want to interview on your show. We've got plenty at your fingertips out there.
Absolutely. Good point, Scott. And let's see. Oh, we're also going to be giving you, because one of the things, and this, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty details of something like this because it's kind of boring, but every podcast has to be hosted on the internet, just like a website is. Okay. And you want a good media host that's state of the art, has all the analytics, provides you all the support you need. Monetize is one of those hosting providers. So we're giving you 90 days of hosting on Monetize as a part of this 2-day and for the fee that Scott, that we're charging for this thing. So you get hosting, which means you get syndicated. It's a part of that service, syndicated to all those different platforms. That's done for you. Like you said, the equipment, I'm trying to think of what else. I mean,
the intro outros, as far as stuff that's easy to create, the artwork, the getting it uploaded to Apple. That's always not the most easiest thing either too, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, there's again, that's sort of reinventing the wheel. You don't need to you just know you want to be on Apple, you want to be on Spotify, and it just gets done for you. Now you have to have at least one episode recorded and done before we can do that. So that doesn't happen on during this course. It will follow that up as soon as you're ready. But again, we talked about content strategy in terms of topics, certainly can go through that. There was something else.
Booking will help you up with your best booking strategies.
Oh, yes.
As far as, setting up things that help automate, whether you're working with Keep or you're using like a Calendly thing, simple things to streamline your production effort or your creation expert, your creation calendar there for you. What do we need to talk about? How do you plan things out? How do you contact people? How do you ask people to be guests? How do you get the word out to what you're doing in marketing wise after recording an episode too?
Well, and how do you make it easy on yourself to collect all the information from a guest? You don't want to be chasing them down for that. You don't want them to be able to book on your calendar unless they've provided you everything you need. So how do you do that? We're going to go through that. Really, sometimes, Scott, it's one of those things where without looking at the course plan, which, because I'm on the road, I don't have in front of me. I've been doing this so long, it's all second nature to me. I don't remember every detail right now of what we're going to cover, but here's all you need to know. You're not going to have to figure out how to do anything, and you're going to have support. That's one of the other things. When you become a customer of Monetize, we provide weekly live webinar support every Wednesday and at a certain time of day, and every customer gets invited. So even after that course is over, you still have some challenges, or a single one, the biggest challenge holding you back from, okay, yeah, guys, put it out there on Apple and everything. Well, you have support. I was reading actually a competitor hosting platform, Scott, that is charges for their services, sort of comparably like us, but they said, oh, and you have tech support via email only. And I'm like, really?
That's not
really. It drives me crazy when there's not a phone number you can pick up and call and get help if you need it. And we're the only platform providing weekly. It's webinar. Anybody who is a customer who wants to come can, but usually there's, a couple dozen, anywhere from, on a slow week, half a dozen up to a couple dozen people. And the more the merrier. There's certainly we don't cap it, but you can get that kind of support.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things you do is I just want to throw this out there, you also, if people have a WordPress website, you also offer that aspect as well to help keep with the maintenance, the editing, and that stuff there for you. That's an outside fee of this, but I'm just telling you folks that so many people have an episode of a website and they never update it because they're doing it themselves. Well, one of the great things you guys are familiar with leadclosenotes.com, right? His team handles all the maintenance for me on it. When I have something about pop, they literally go in. Part of the production, what they do is they're going in and uploading the episodes, uploading the podcast, uploading the images, the videos, stuff like that. Or I tell Kim over there, hey, I need to adjust this photo or adjust this. It's that they keep the maintenance up. There's so many things that I've all seen websites with bad links or stuff that's outdated. Videos are not there. That's not the case. That's a beautiful thing.
So that's something that we didn't really intend to get into that business, but we found in order to provide proper support to our clients, and people have been with us for 4 and 5 years. The ones that are, as long as they're still podcasting, then they're having success. That's that. Other than an event like this, our number one source of new customers are referrals from existing customers. So that shows you something about how happy they are. But anyway, back to the point is that in order to properly support those customers who were struggling with their websites, and we had that expertise, and then we even added to it. We have a whole web department now with half a dozen full-time people. And yes, we do maintain websites. We make sure all the software, all the plugins are up to date. We run an analysis every month of the performance of the website, the page load speed. And there are many different things this analysis scores, and every customer of this, it's a relatively reasonable monthly subscription for website maintenance that not only covers that sort of stuff, like if the site gets infected with malware, we are the ones that fix it. Which that happened recently. Actually, a lot of people got infected with this really weird malware, I think month before last, that was a very clever WordPress thing that like impersonated a plugin, and it caused all sorts of havoc. We go in and fix that. But more than that, you want a new page created on your website, a new landing page for some program you're going to sell, you submit a request, we do it. You want to update some images on your website, you submit a request, we do it. So you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty. You're welcome to. It's not like you own the site, you can make whatever changes you want. It's just some people don't want to bother with that. They have better things to do with their time, but we do provide that kind of support. So that's available.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Let's talk about something asked online here. What are the dates for the class? What do you got it on your calendar there? I don't have those dates there.
And hold on, I have to tell you, Scott, I'm on Tracy's computer. So I have it on my calendar. I'm hoping I have it on it's on my phone. So it's in late September though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that it was going to be like the last weekend of September. Let me pull it up here.
Yeah, it was the 25th, 26th, is it?
25th or 26th. Yeah, it was the 18th or 19th or the 25th or 26th.
So we're, yeah, so that's what we're looking at. Certainly well after Labor Day. I thought we picked one, but that's also in my mind still, we could choose one or the other. I don't know if anybody has,
I think it was the 25th and 26th.
25th, 26th. I thought so too. End of September. And yeah, it'll be a great weekend. I really enjoy those things because, we don't just talk about doing it, we do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is making it simple. Literally, if you guys wanted to launch something, it doesn't necessarily, if you want to do a podcast on something besides real estate, we're still there to help you. But one of the great things about what we do and our expertise is helping identify those opportunities, tweaking things to make it impactful for you from the get-go. So many people out go and try and do this themselves. Yeah. Could you go find a class that's not costing you $9.97 to do a podcast? Yeah, there's all sorts of them out there, but they're not going to make sure, they're just going to throw you and you're going to get what you pay for. All right. You're not going to have somebody, you're not going to have the largest, and that's what monetize.com is, the nation's largest podcast production company out there. Tom and Tracy have built that. And like I said, not only are they helping produce production for 500 Plus podcasts, I don't know how many are you guys hosting? You're hosting a lot more than that too, aren't you?
Yeah, a lot more than that. I mean, we're still sort of on the small side hosting wise, with a couple thousand, but that's an area we're working to grow, of course. But we started as a production company, and because we're just passionate about helping people squeeze every bit of value out of what they record and put out as a podcast. The hosting thing sort of came along. Yeah, we should do that too, because we can do some different things, some better things, if we also host podcasts, right?
They've got a great dashboard where I'm able to log in my dashboard, see how many downloads I've had for the week, for the month, what episode spiked. I've got multiple podcasts. Obviously, you guys know the Note Closer Show. We also have Note Night in America. And then, of course, Note Camp. All these episodes will be turned into a podcast episode, a full blog, full transcribed blog, about a month or two out after we air these and after the replays release. It's just another way to turn one piece of content into multiple pieces of marketing material. So let's talk about it. Obviously, we're live here, but second thing, the video on YouTube is one piece. The audio podcast, the second piece. Okay. The blog that you create, the third piece. The transcription, not the transcription, but the ego bait that you do, the fourth piece.
The quote graphic. Yep.
The graphic. Literally multiple ways for you guys to create one thing and share it everywhere else. And you don't have to just use it once. You can rinse and repeat and use these in a variety of facets out there. All you got to do is hit the record button and record for 5, 10, 20 hour, whatever your topic is. And you guys run with the rest, right, Tom?
That's right. It's really that simple. Record, upload, done. That's the idea here.
It's a no-brainer, ladies and gentlemen.
And one other thing let's mention about that, Scott, we talk about strategies we're going to talk about in this course, how to strategies for how you can do this in a way you can manage the time. Some people think, oh my gosh, I have a weekly podcast. I have to do it every week. I'm going to have to schedule time in my calendar. No, you don't. You can batch record and spend one afternoon a month recording episodes to get you breathing room for the next month. So this is meant to be one thing you do to market and grow your business, not dominate what you do. So just be aware of that. We'll get into more detail about how that happens, or how, what we recommend for that, help you manage your own time so that you can do this and benefit from it and not have it just really, take over.
And that's the big thing. I think most people are like, oh my God, I don't have the time for that. Look, if you've got 2 to 3 hours once a month, you could film 3 to 4 30-minute episodes all in one spot, and you've got a month of content that can be released for you on a weekly basis for you. And then the social media, and then sharing it. And look here, podcasters love to recommend other podcasters because it becomes a family. And one of the easiest ways to really make an impact, if you're looking to speak more, hey, interview people that you want to speak in front of, vendors you want to deal with, talk with them. You know, you guys all have such a variety. Every one of you could do an episode on your vendors. You could do it on your investors. I think a great podcast, not worth me thinking about this, is somebody filming, recording individual IRA investors and having them talk about the deal. You know,
Wow.
that's, you know, because we think about it, we can pull IRA investors in literally like 5 seconds. Marketing to them, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast. Well, really? You want to interview me about a deal? Well, tell me more about what you do. Well, you have deals to fund? Wow. Can I fund those deals? This is specifically something like I'm going to be implementing here before too long. Would you like to be a guest on my podcast? What? Not would you like to fund my deal? Would you like to be a guest on my podcast? That's pretty insightful.
It's really, it warms up a lead that I might otherwise really be giving you the Heisman. Why would I work with you?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
That's the whole point here. Well, not always the whole point. With certain types of podcasts, one strategy is doing that, building rapport with your ideal customer or client. Just how do you provide them value? How do you do that through a podcast? There's a few different ways, and depending on what your personal goals are too. So this is just a couple of suggestions.
Right. That's one of the things I've done in the past with different hedge fund guys who've like sent me product afterwards, other bankers. I mean, I've had one of the most downloaded episodes on YouTube I saw, and then also on podcast was when I talked with Juan Roboyo from Sibilis Capital out of Miami just recently. He interviewed me he was on my show on his dinner room table one night via YouTube. I mean, it was via Zoom, and it's been a great download, great episode that's led to other things out there. So
that's something we didn't touch on, is the tangent benefits, or the fringe benefits, you might say, that come from podcasting. You know, if you aspire to speak, that's a good example, Scott, you gave. You're going to be found by more event planners. You're going to be sought after. You know, if you're somebody putting yourself out there, providing value, like, wow, that's great, I'd love to have her at my event. Right? Why not?
Exactly. All right, bud. Well, hey, I will let you get back to your event there. You're at there in San Diego at Dana Point. Give Tracy, give Michelle, Aaron, Kevin, everybody over there, big hug, high five from me. Catherine and Laura as well, too. Steve as well. Steve's probably wearing his Boston Red Sox cap.
Yeah, he is. Yep. I will. He is here. Yep. I will certainly send everyone your regards. And we wish you were here. We miss you. But hey, you got to do note camp. So.
Right. Good stuff. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thank you.